the dust settles on the Maharashtra political crisis, Uddhav Thackeray is all set to lead the Maharashtra Vikas Aghadi front. The swearing-in ceremony will take place at Shivaji Park in Dadar at 6:40 in the evening tomorrow. Elaborate security arrangements have been made for the big event. Meanwhile, the Sena-NCP and the Congress alliance is holding hectic deliberations to give shape to the new government as power-sharing talks are underway. But the story of the day has been Ajit Pawar. From the warm welcome he received from Supriya Sule to rumours through the day that he may get the Deputy Chief Minister post in the Aghadi government. That means no matter what happens, Ajit Pawar comes out on top. So we have to wait and see if that happens. The bigger question, though, is what the Maharashtra turn of events means for the national picture. This interesting map has been doing the rounds since this morning that shows the spread of the BJP across the country in 2017, where the party ruled nearly 70% of India through its various state governments. In present day, that size has shrunk to 40%. This, of course, doesn't take away from the fact that the party has won a huge mandate for the second time in the central government. Now, to put the events in Maharashtra into context, I am joined today by a columnist and avid political watcher, Santosh Desai. Mr. Desai, thank you for joining us on the India Development Debate. Great to have you here. Just, your first thoughts on what we've seen over the last 1 month. It's yesterday's news, but that entire process of back and forth has left not just journalists, but the people of Maharashtra also wondering what they voted for and what finally happened.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to look at the last month, certainly I think the whole events have a sordid air about them, because I think in many ways we saw the worst of what Indian politics is kind of capable of. Because, no party kind of had covered itself in glory, because you had, the breaking of a long-term alliance which had won a sort of a, not the biggest of margins, but it had won, I think, clearly in the elections. That being kind of broken because of the ambitions of one party, and after which, of course, everyone knows the kind of series of events where you had the unlikely alliances, then you had the government stepping in and the BJP sort of using unprecedented methods to try and cobble together and steal, sort of out of government from under the noses of the other coalition. So I think it has been a particularly kind of a difficult time for most people. I mean, used as we are to the ways of Indian politics, I think even then, I think this was a new low, and I think that was the reaction I think that was commonly heard about what the state of politics has become in the country.
What did you make, Mr. Desai, of the whole Ajit Pawar angle? I mean, that's really the enduring mystery of the Maharashtra political affair. And especially today when he's back in the fold, and we're showing those pictures on our screen as well, he gets a hug from his cousin, Supriya Sule, and we both know they were bitter enemies within the party. Do you believe the Trojan horse theory that's being floated, which is that, Ajit Pawar was sent in by Sharad Pawar to sort of confuse the BJP?
Yeah. I'm skeptical about that. I think that is kind of reading, I mean, they're giving perhaps too much credit to the elder Mr. Pawar also. I don't necessarily think that is what happened. But I think clearly, I mean, he saw, I think Ajit Pawar saw, the fact of the matter is that after Sharad Pawar, what happens with the NCP is a real question. And therefore, Ajit Pawar saw an opportunity to kind of cement, I think, his place in the, Maharashtra political scheme of things. He, I think overestimated his own abilities and underestimated that of his uncle. And I think, and therefore the way it played out. From the NCP's perspective, I think the keenness not to leave a festering wound and not to merely postpone sort of, this kind of a split is perhaps the reason why, in spite of the fact that I'm sure Ajit Pawar is hardly welcome in a real sense, I think they are putting on a brave face and trying to do everything they can to make him feel welcome, so as to not kind of cement and further a rupture that is evidently there. So I think it's a question of trying to manage and trying to convert what might be an unstable sort of a truce into something a little more lasting.
Well, talking about unstable and lasting, what is your take on the government that we will see taking oath. The swearing-in ceremony, of course, will be tomorrow, and there are many formulas doing the round of how many ministries will go to the Shiv Sena, the Congress and the NCP. Unlikely bedfellows, but do you think that this whole push of survival and keeping the BJP out will be enough of a glue to keep them together for 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years is a very long time. So I don't know about 5 years, but I think, see, it's like this, that there is at one level, there are the contradictions that are likely to surface, going forward. But on the other hand, there is a recognition of the fact that, if they don't stick together, then, all of their political futures are in doubt. I mean, Shiv Sena has, by kind of attaching itself to the coattails of the BJP, managed, I think, perhaps a better performance than it would have certainly, had it not been allied with the BJP. And the NCP has also, got an unlikely kind of a second wind in this election, and something that they cannot necessarily bank on. So there are, compulsions and motivations that sort of put these three unlikely kind of, at least Shiv Sena and the other two together. And so there is the push and the pull. So there is the inherent, pull away, and the fissures that would widen, and yet there is mutuality of interest that kind of pull them together. So both of these forces are at work, and it's unlikely. I mean, 5 years seems like a really long time, but there is a reason why they would try and make this work to the best of their ability.
Okay, national impact of what we're saying. I mean, they're hoping that the swearing-in ceremony will be a show of opposition strength, etc. Impact for the BJP and impact for the Congress. We were talking earlier about how, in terms of power in state governments, it's changed for the BJP since 2017, where a series of state elections took place. Do you think this angry ally plus desperate opposition kind of formula can become a template for other states, especially Bihar?
Yes, I think there is. I think there are a couple of messages that are kind of coming through, and I think Maharashtra is actually an extension of a message that has been coming through. Even for instance, beginning with Gujarat, for the fact that the BJP's local strengths in states seems to be sort of waning, and that there is a clear, while in a sense the center is holding, and more than holding, it is actually cementing its position. What you are seeing is its inability to convert the sort of its position in the center to the other states. Part of the reason, of course, is the fact that in the way in which it works, it tends not to leave that much space for allies, and therefore there are, particularly in the states where allies play a key role, there are resentments, and which is natural given the dominating nature of the central kind of a government and its presence and the way that it conducts itself. So I think part of the problem is with their allies, but part of the problem is that also because there is, I think, where you see rural distress and where you see the absence of economic growth beginning to sort of show up in a variety of ways, is at the local state level. At the central level, somehow people increasingly seem to be rising out of those considerations, and themes like nationalism still seem to be attractive. But when it comes to more local issues and more local decisions, I think I think it is a sign that there are real issues that the electorate is facing, which gets funneled through the regional parties to a certain extent, and where you are beginning to see the BJP's kind of hold in a lot of these states slipping.
Yeah.
And again, Haryana is a very narrow kind of a victory. And Bihar, as you said, is there. UP again, you have important states. Jharkhand, for instance, if you were to look at some of the opinion polls, are suggesting that it's a really tight contest that is developing there. So I think that pattern, I think, is something that you are seeing nationally, and I think it should be clearly worrying the BJP, because that sense of a one party kind of dominance that seemed very likely till about 2017 looks far from coming true for them today.
What do you think is the reason? I know that's a big ask. We can only guess what it is. But in your view, what do you think is the reason for this sort of change in not a change in fortunes, but a lessening of enthusiasm for the BJP in these state elections. Do you think it's the impact of the slowdown kicking in?
Yes, I do see the impact of the slowdown. I also see it, although it perhaps Maharashtra was not necessarily so. I also see the fact that, you know, there is a kind of a, if you like, a congressization of the BJP, you know, which is with the, you know, a command and control, very, very strong emphasis on the center. And inevitably when you have such a strong kind of an asymmetry in the power relations between the state and the center, you do find that some of the energy and some of the the local kind of leadership and the emergence of local leadership begins to kind of weaken. And I think part of the reason is that, and I think part of the reason is the slowdown and the fact that there is genuine distress, and I think it sort of funnels itself through local elections much more than it does through central elections. So you get this very kind of a strangely kind of disconnected view at the center where they've come back in greater force. But I think in the local sort of state after state, you are seeing that, and a lot of the local leadership is not necessarily, you know, anywhere near as inspiring as this, you know, central leadership, even for their supporters. And I think therefore the waning of enthusiasm, I think, is something that one sees.
Yeah, but where is the challenge coming from, Mr. Desai? Because the Congress is only diminishing on the other hand. Even in the case of Maharashtra, it's sort of like, you know, at the tail end of this entire combination. So is the challenge coming from regional parties?
Yeah, but is the real, but you know, the real, yeah. See, the real story here, I don't think is the emergence of a challenger that is credible. The real story is the weakening of the, so it's a, you know, it is forces of attrition that are at work rather than a strong counterpoint emerging. In none of the states, I mean, would you see that there is a sort of a definitive counterpoint that has emerged to the BJP? There isn't a challenger in that classical sense. That is, you know, it's not as if there is a renewed, you know, belief in any of the parties that have done relatively better against the BJP. It is simply that the kind of a disproportionate hold that the BJP had is slipping, and that's where you see it is. Also, the other thing that is happening, I think it's important to note, is that because the BJP has opened its doors to people, you know, opportunist kind of sort of defections from all parties. Today, there is a real problem that it has in terms of being able to distribute, you know, the goodies, so to speak. I mean, because you have its own, you know, classical base, then you have a whole lot of new entrants that have come in who need to be appeased because they have come in because they believe that that is their ticket to power, and the BJP has felt it worthwhile to include them. But having done that, so which is what you saw in Maharashtra, the number of dissident and rebel candidates that came up from the BJP, and that is inevitably the problem that of a large party which opens its doors, otherwise ideologically kind of closely held together, but increasingly kind of opening its doors to people of a very different hue, and therefore the internal tensions that arise as a result, which also weakens. So again, it's a weakening from within that I think has much more to do with this than a challenge from outside.
Absolutely. Interesting days ahead, and of course bigger lessons from the whole Maharashtra drama that we saw carrying on for a month. We'll now have to see how this combination actually moves into governance. Thank you so much, Mr. Desai, for joining us today for that chat.